Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, I'm Linda, and this is for the record, Your Honor. Bethany Joy Lenz, renowned for her portrayal of Haley James Scott on One Tree Hill back in the early 2000s, where she shared the screen with Sophia Bush, Chad Michael Murray, and Hilary Burton. Did you watch One Tree Hill on the WB? Let me know in the comments and in the chat. I was very attached to Dawson's Creek when I was younger, but eventually I became a fan of OTH. Even went to North Carolina to see the real life set of both and the studios in Wilmington. Bethany has openly discussed her decade-long involvement with a cult known as Big House Family. Her memoir, Dinner for Vampires, released on October 22nd of last year, delves into this profound period of her life. And let me tell you right off the bat, this book is excellent. If you prefer Audible books, it's even better. Bethany narrates her own story and does a wonderful job at making you feel almost like you were right there seeing it all happen. Her theater background truly shows with her switching of characters. Len's entanglement with the cult began under the guise of a Bible study group, which gradually evolved into a controlling environment. During the tenure on One Tree Hill, she defended her involvement with concerned co-stars, attributing it to a unique spiritual journey. Co-star Craig Schaefer challenged her beliefs, but she dismissed his concerns at the time. She even says her co-star told her point blank she was in a cult early into filming.
I was like, no, cults are weird. Cults are people in robes chanting crazy things and drinking Kool-Aid, she told him. That's not what we do.
Eventually the cracks began to show, but Lenz didn't know that she could get out. She'd marry a fellow family member, and in 2012, a year after the birth of her daughter, Rosie, she realized she wanted to leave both her marriage and the cult, but it wasn't easy.
The stakes were so high, she says. They were my only friends. I was married into this group. I had built my entire life around it. If I admitted that I was wrong, everything else would come crumbling down. I think I've got a powerful cautionary tale. I think it's relatable, and I think I can help so many more people telling this story than I can by acting, Lenz told The Hollywood Reporter.
While the writing often flows smoothly, revisiting painful times is difficult, according to Lenz.
Recovery looks different for everyone depending on your experience of trauma, she explains. I had to start from a baseline of my personal understanding of God and the experiences I had had. And then there was a lot of going back to who I was before and remembering that, and then acknowledging that there was so much I just didn't know.
Within the cult, Lenz endured a 6-year marriage to the leader's son, referred to as QB. The relationship lacked emotional and intellectual connection, and she was subjected to a sex schedule.
I'm a writer at heart, so turning a phrase is easy for me, she adds. Exploring the memories and really facing them can be challenging, but I'm doing it.
Contributing to her post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, the cult's influence extended to her finances, simping off approximately $2 million from her earnings. Her involvement with the cult significantly impacted her career, leading her to reject substantial opportunities, including a role as Belle in The Beauty and the Beast on Broadway, which was a huge deal for her. The consistent work on One Tree Hill and the birth of her daughter were pivotal in her decision to leave the cult in 2012.
Through a character, I was able to live this vicarious other life of someone that was more free and vulnerable and trusting and curious, and all of these things that I wasn't allowing myself to experience in reality. It was like God gave me this outlet to remind me of who I really am, Lenz said.
In her memoir, Lenz reflects on reclaiming her past and aims to provide hope to others facing similar challenges, emphasizing that sharing one's story can diminish the power of shame.
I don't think of it as brave, she says, of why she's finally opening up. I think of it as important. Living silently in the suffering I experienced, I don't know if that helps anyone.
She hopes her book will empower others in similar situations
Is the right thing to do.
If you're in need of an interesting read, definitely go grab Dinner for Vampires.
So the big house was the mansion where my grandfather and his children and grandchildren and a few others stayed. This was the main house that everyone would meet at when he called the morning meetings, or sometimes even night meetings, and this is where everyone will come for breakfast, lunch, and dinner if they weren't working, and this house was to be cleaned from 8 in the morning to 4 p.m. by the women and children who lived there, and also other women from the organization who weren't working. The house consisted of the main house, which has 10 rooms in it, including the master, the garage, which had 2 rooms in it, including bathrooms and kitchens, the guest house, which had also 2 rooms, 2 bathrooms, a kitchen, its own garage, and multiple little small buildings that were for storage or for cars, and also there was a big field, definitely more than half the size of a football field, but I can't explain how big it is, I'm not sure exactly. And then next to that there was the performance center, which was used as the gym, which also had a room in it. And next to that was another little play area for the kids, where they installed a trampoline. And there was a track, like an actual track, that ran around the whole property. All the maintenance, yard, and housework was done by the men of the house and the men of the organization. In order to live in the house, besides the people who already lived there, like his children and his wives, you had to be approved by him, and you had to be one of the elite members of the organization. The women were to wake up at 3 o'clock every morning, so breakfast could be served by 6 a.m., and the lunch was served at 12 p.m., and then dinner was served at 4:30 p.m. So every person has to turn in the investment every week, which was $600 plus the 10% you take from your check for tithes and offering, so they were having to pay $1,200 every 2 weeks to this organization to be a part of it. After a while, they switched it to the women having to pay $1,200 every 2 weeks, and men have to pay $1,400 every 2 weeks. And everyone was required to have 2 jobs over the age of 18. So basically, all these people in this organization pay for the elite members to stay in this fancy-ass house. Most of his kids don't work real jobs, and having to literally ask him for money for basic things like groceries or clothes or toiletries, and if they went and got things without asking for the money, it was considered stealing from the organization, and they got in trouble.
I was in a cult for 10 years, Lenz said during a July 2023 episode of her Drama Queens podcast, which she co-hosts with fellow OTH stars Hillary Burton Morgan and Sophia Bush. That would be a really valuable experience to write about, and the recovery. 10 years of recovery after that. So, there's a lot to tell.
I feel proud of it. People often ask me, "Are you excited?" And I'm thinking excited is not the right adjective because it's not a story that I was ever really dying to tell. Lenz said of the book on the Call Her Daddy podcast in October 2024, noting that after many conversations with women, she decided that writing a book was the right thing to do. For a while, they were all trying to save me and rescue me, which is lovely and so amazing to be cared about in that way. But I was very stubborn, she recalled to Variety. I was really committed to what I believed were the best choices I could make. The nature of a group like that is isolation. They have to make you distrust everyone around you so that the only people you trust are, first and foremost, the leadership. And then, people within the group, if the leadership approves of them, and isn't in the middle of pitting you against each other, which happens all the time also. She further told Variety that filming OTH in North Carolina helped her gain a spatial separation from the Bible-based cult that helped her ultimately decide to leave. Before leaving the Big House family, Lenz reached her breaking point. There's a lot of highs and lots of lows, and at some point you just are like, "Can I get off this ride, please? What's wrong with me? Why am I so up and down all the time?" She told E! News. And sometimes it just takes a few people at the right moment saying, "It might not be anything wrong with you." And that can be a relief. Lenz continued, "I had lost a lot of my faith along the way, and one of my prayers was just sort of like, you have to just meet me where I am because I don't even know if I know who you are anymore. And that's how God just kept showing up for me in spite of the fact that I was thrusting a middle finger up in the air and being like, screw you." Lenz revealed on the Tamron Hall show that she was first drawn to the group for a Bible study type atmosphere. "That just felt natural and normal to me," she said. I grew up stomping around the city. I lived in Jersey, and I was an only child, and my parents, wonderful people, had their own things going on, and I felt like I didn't have a huge connection to family or community. Lenz, as a result, sought a place that felt safe after moving to Los Angeles from New York, she said, before noting that she eventually felt isolated from her OTH co-stars and her parents. But I felt like I was being loved. They start to convince you that you're amazing, you're wonderful, and then they tear you down and start picking at all the little things. Until you feel like nothing. And then they start to build you back up again. It's like, these people love me in spite of the fact that I'm just such a mess. She announced her memoir via Instagram, calling the cult an abusive, high-demand group. Being a writer has been a great private joy in my life since I was about 12. This isn't the first book I thought I'd write publicly, but as difficult as this subject matter is to untangle, I'm grateful I get to share my story my way, she added. It's a story of forgiveness and a roadmap to how manipulation works, with heartache and humor along the way. We all make mistakes, and I hope Dinner for Vampires reminds you that, no matter what weird roads you've gone down, you're not alone.